The academic agent elaborated in his latest cigar string a monarchic-syndicalist system. In that video, he forwarded a plan for a monarchic-syndicalist system based around a unit of 200, a number chosen in accordance to Dunbar's number. He asserts that Dunbar's number will ensure friendship and unity within the unit. This unit then forms a larger division, led by a divisional king. The divisional king will then be led by the king of kings. In this rebuttal, I will point out the foundational problems with this idea, and I will try to refer to history and human nature as much as possible, in order to prove that this system is not viable for any long-term survival. Response to the unit system. The Dunbar number does not conform to human demographic patterns. Humans have always been far more attracted to areas with greater specialization, where goods and services can be accessed at the lowest possible price, and where their skills will gain the greatest possible outcome. For example, in China, the People's Commune population restriction was removed in 1982, and the members of communes could move from the rural countryside to the city. By 1989, 60 to 80 million people have moved into China's urban areas. By the year 2015, 56% of China's population was urban. This shows that people will always gravitate towards conglomeration, making the unit, as proposed by the academic agent, unfeasible and in direct opposition to human nature. If you go ahead and prevent this human instinct, you will end up with a less productive populace who rely on subsistence living or minimal specialization, instead of the level of specialization today which has allowed us to innovate and create the wonders in the modern world. The concept of passing down power by inheritance or some other method to a new generation, a new unit, may sound good at first, but history has shown us otherwise. The Ruriks of the Grand Principality of Kiev had a similar system, where princes of the realm were given authority to go colonize the vast Slav lands and form independent principalities. This system made room for great internal conflicts. Yaroslav the Wise fought many wars against his brother Sviatopolk, with them each bringing in foreign powers to help in their conflict, which is a point I will get into later with my criticism of the King of Kings structure. The unit kings will all have an incentive to try to achieve some sense of superiority, even if it is as petty as who gets to have the family heirloom or who gets the hotter wife. These local disputes can then involve the unit militias and foster animosity between the original units. These units will then separate, creating more and more units, all with this original animosity, and eventually they will be able to cause conflict in a grander scale. For example, the Jews and the Samaritans, who despite sharing ancestry, were torn apart by petty disputes over the construction of the Second Temple of Jerusalem in the 4th century BC. And this animosity existed all the way down to their descendants in the 1st century AD, and in Christ's parable of the Good Samaritan. The academic agent has outlined a few main functions of the divisional kings, and I will strive to debunk some of them. The existence of a divisional king with control over around 2 million people will require a degree of centralization. A court will have to be set up to help the king arbitrate disputes between unit kings. However, in AA system, no such court exists. Only the army's arbitrary capital prerogative exists. Whether they are drones or extremely loyal soldiers, reliance of justice on an enforcement body instead of an independent judicial body will cause incredible acts of tyranny. Who gives out the arrest warrants? The soldiers. Who gives out the verdict on a controversial nationwide case? The soldiers. Who gives out the capital sentence? The soldiers. Drones or not, the population will quickly come to despise this soldier class, seeing them as the source of all their problems. For example, an extremely popular unit king who has the respect of the nation can be murdered by these death robots or unsullied soldiers simply by calling a general fat during a drunken stupor. Controversy after controversy will build up into open rebellion. Thus the divisional king becomes entirely inept at arbitrating disputes between unit kings, because they will take the blame for any grief caused. Divisional kings will also not be obliged to resist invasions. Divisional kings will face difficult situations. In fact, AA even admitted that issues such as land disputes will come up. I have already touched on why internal issues can explode into conflict within the lands of the divisional kings. But what if there is a major land dispute between two divisional kings? AA would point out that the King of Kings exists who will stop any such disputes. But I have already mentioned instances throughout history where internal divisions can cause the participants to resort to bringing in foreign powers. I have already mentioned the Ruriks and Prince Yaroslav's struggle with his brother, where he brought in Swedish contingents while his brother called in King Boleslav of Poland. Another major example is the Byzantine Empire in the late 11th century. During the reign of Michael VII, many nobles called in Seljuk Turks to aid in their struggles, opened the gates of major cities and castles to them, and when these nobles were defeated, the Seljuks simply never left. This led to the conquest of Anatolia. A similar event could happen where a dispute occurs between two divisional kings and the King of Kings ruled against one of them. Fearing mortal danger, he would then call upon foreign powers to help him. Even if this divisional king was taken out by his own army, the foreign army would simply stay, refusing to leave the lands they have already occupied. It was mentioned that corruption can be avoided due to the sanctity of the office. It does not matter how sacred the population views an office, it is still vulnerable to corruption. Just look at the papacy. The topic of bribery for the King of Kings came up. One obvious factor is familial connections. For example, a divisional king could arrange for the children of the King of Kings to gain kingship over good units, stacked with attractive men and women, or successful entrepreneurial folks, possessing an IQ over 130. Who would give up such a prospect for their children? That should be it for my criticisms of the academic agent's monarchic-syndicalist system. I understand that this is not what he actually advocates for, but I just found it fun to debate and flex my historian credentials. Honestly, this video is just a warm-up for what I have planned. Not my first video ever, but I just got a new computer and a few things needed hashing out. So I thought I'd do a warm-up video first. Hope you enjoyed. Dislike, subscribe, unsubscribe. I don't really care, to be honest. I just need all of the interactions I can get. Goodbye.